This is instructional video for the Lace Trellis short rows. This is a Japanese technique and all you will need is the locking stitch marker. For the sake of the video, I cast on 40 stitches and I will be doing short rows every 5 stitches instead of 10 as it's instructed in the Lace Trellis Cardigan pattern. What I'm going to do is I'm going to knit 5 stitches, that'll be for the first and second row. I had to knit the first row and purl the second row. This is the third row of the short row pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches knit. Now I will turn work, so I'm on the wrong side, and what I have to do is I'm going to slip the first stitch from the left hand needle onto the right hand needle, so the working yarn will be coming from the right hand needle now. There it is. Next thing we have to do is take the locking stitch marker and attach it to the working yarn like that. So now the stitch marker will be hanging on the working yarn between the right hand needle and the left hand needle stitches, and we purl into the next stitch on the left hand needle. So there it is. Right now you can see it, how the locking stitch marker is just hanging on that yarn between 2 stitches. And we purl to the end of the row. And turn work. So this is what the wrong side looks like. We turn work and we're gonna have to knit to the stitch marker. We knit to the stitch marker. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the pattern, there will be 9 stitches in here. So what we have to do now is we're gonna have to pull the stitch marker and the yarn it holds onto the left hand needle with the right leg of the stitch in the front of the needle. And here's what it's gonna look like that. So the front leg of the needle is right of the yarn is before the is right in front of the left hand needle, and here's the next stitch. And now we have to knit the stitch and this yarn over together. Knit it together like that. Slip it off the needle, and now we can remove the locking stitch marker, and we'll need it for the next short row. What we do next is knit the next 5 stitches, or 10 as instructed in the pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we repeat the same pattern, the same thing. We have to turn work. We're on the wrong side now, and slip the first stitch of the left needle onto the right. So now the working yarn is coming from the right hand needle, and again we will take our locking stitch marker and we'll attach it to the working yarn like so. So right now it will be hanging between 2 stitches, and we purl into the next stitch on the left hand needle, and we purl to the end of the row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we turn work. And start knitting, and we knit to the locking stitch marker. I would suggest before you, when you attach the locking stitch marker, that you pull the yarn tightly so it's not loose between those two stitches. It will just look neater. The short rows will look neater when the yarn over and the next stitch from the left needle are knit together. One more. And we're at the stitch marker again. And what we do is we pull this, we grab onto the stitch marker and make sure the right leg of the stitch is placed on the needle with the right leg in front of the needle, like that. So right now we have this stitch and this yarn over, and we will knit it together. Let me try and position it better. Here we go. And we knit it together like that. Slip it off the needle, and now we can remove the stitch marker. And we knit next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is what the short rows already worked on look like. You can see some of it, but it's still pretty neat looking. So we turn work again, and the first step is to place the last work stitch off of the left needle onto the right, so the working yarn will be coming from the right hand needle, and we're gonna place the locking stitch marker onto the working yarn, let it hang, and we purl the next stitch, and we purl all of the rest of the stitches to the end of the row. And when we're at the end of the row, we'll turn work. So here's the wrong side, what it looks like. And you can see just a little bit where the yarn overs and the next stitch were knit together. But it's not that obvious. We turn it again, and we knit to the locking stitch marker. Keep knitting until you hit the stitch marker, and we will do the same thing. We will grab onto the stitch marker. We're almost there. Here we go. So the stitch marker again is right between these stitches. We grab on to the stitch marker. Make sure you position the stitch properly with the right leg in front of the left hand needle, like that. I just like to kind of put it the back of the needle. And we need 2 together, the stitch and the yarn over, and remove the stitch marker. Here we go. Right there. So right now we did 3 short rows. First, second, and this is the third one. And you just keep going and following the instructions in the pattern. What I'm going to do is knit to the end of the row, so I can turn it on the other side and show you how to do short rows on the wrong side when we're purling. So this is just me knitting to the end of the row. Now we're done with one side of the short rows, and we just knit to the very end, so we can start working on the other side of the garment or the swatch of the short rows. What we're going to do is turn the work, so we're actually at the wrong side, and we're going to continue with short rows of the other side. So we're going to knit, we're going to purl 5 stitches, and here I have to tell you that I knit continental style. It's easier for me to work like that. I adopted and adjusted. Whatever your style is, you're going to have to make sure when you will be purling 2 stitches together or stitch and a yarn over together that your stitches are properly positioned on the needle. So right now that we worked 5 stitches, we're going to have to turn our work. There we go. And the way we will purl it, this stitch has to be positioned the right way on the right needle. So it should be actually it should be positioned just like that. It should be positioned front leg in the back of the needle. I'm going to try and turn the stitch. So front leg should be in the back, and back leg, this one, should be in the front of the stitch. This way when we purl it together, it will look just like that, and the stitch will not be turned. So just make sure it's just positioned right. So at this point, I'm going to take the removable stitch marker, attach it to the working yarn. There it hangs between the stitches. Just hold it here to kind of secure it there on the yarn, and we knit to the end of the row. Now we turn it, and we're going to purl to the stitch marker. However many stitches you need to purl. So what we do now is we're going to grab the stitch marker. I'm going to try and do it. And again, this has to be positioned the right way too. So it will be, you're going to have to just put it over with the front leg in front of the left needle. And you're going to purl the stitch and the yarn over together. Here we go. Done. We're going to remove the stitch marker. So now the yarn over and the stitch are knit together. And here we go. We're going to start on the next pattern repeat or short row repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches purled, return work. Again, make sure this stitch positioned correctly. It'll be just like that, with the back leg in front of the right needle and front leg on the back of the needle. And again, put a removable marker or locking marker on the working yarn and knit to the very back, to the last stitch. That's done. Now turn work and purl to the marker. Here we go. And we repeat again. Grab onto the stitch marker, place this yarn over or loop on the left needle with the front leg in the front of the needle, and purl the stitch on the needle and the loop together like that. Remove the stitch marker. And we'll do one more. Purl 5 or 10 in the case of the pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Turn work. Slip the first stitch to the right hand needle. Place the stitch marker on a working yarn right there. Knit to the end of the row. There it is. And you can see right now that it's slanted, and it's not that obvious. You could tell where the short rows are, but it looks pretty good. So turn work and purl to the stitch marker. There we go. And the pattern is pretty descriptive. The video is just a little extra to guide you through. Alright, so we're at the stitch marker and we'll do the same thing. We will grab onto the stitch marker and we will position this yarn over with the front leg in front of the left needle, and we will purl the stitch and the yarn over together. Let me get in there. Here we go. And we're gonna purl it together, and we will remove the stitch marker. And we had 3 short rows, and at this point I will purl to the end of the row, and I will show you what it's gonna look like when it's done. And short rows are done. So this is what the short rows created. Just a little slanted. Let me move it to the cable. There you go. That's what it will look like when you're finishing the bottom of the lace trellis cardigan. And we will need that little bit of extra material there on the sides. And a close-up of this. And a close-up of this. This is one side with the short rows. And you can see some of it, but it's actually pretty straight. And the other side of the short rows. There goes, that's one. And when you wash it, it will be straightened out even more. There goes another one right there that I can tell, and here's another one. So, Japanese short rows.